Now, the US State Department's warned of consequences if Israel implements a ban on the main...
2 million people live in Gaza, and at least 90% of them have been displaced from their homes.
Israel is striking...
There are mounting fears that Israeli strikes against...
Middle East now, and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been talking about Israel's narrative.
For Palestinians, it's been 12 months of unprecedented loss and suffering.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה.
It is the first agreement ever signed between Palestinians and the State of Israel.
I see in this commitment on the part of the PLO a change, a dramatic change, that opens the road towards reconciliation and peace between the Palestinians and Israel.
The year 1993 marked a significant moment when Israel and Palestine were on the brink of drafting a peaceful resolution. However, subsequent events deteriorated the situation to such an extent that conflict persists between them today. To understand today's crisis properly, we must delve into the history of how Israel came to be and how the conflict between Israel and Palestine began. Our story begins thousands of years ago. The horrific treatment of Jews by Hitler is widely known, but the persecution of Jews began millennia ago. It is said that Jesus Christ was born into a Jewish family, and some Christians believe that certain Jews sought his crucifixion. This ideology gave rise to a belief that lingered among Christians for decades and even centuries. During the Crusades, approximately 1,000 years ago, Christians extensively killed Jews. At that time, numerous rumors circulated against Jews, such as claims that they drank Christian children's blood or used it for religious rituals. These rumors fueled intense hatred against Jews, a burden borne by very few religions over the past 1,000 years. After the 1800s, hatred towards Jews stemmed not only from religious reasons, but also from viewing them as a distinct ethnic group. Consequently, by the late 1800s, Jews worldwide began to feel unaccepted by any nation. They realized that if they wanted to live in peace, they needed to establish their own country. An Austro-Hungarian journalist named Theodor Herzl led the movement for establishing a Jewish state. In his 1896 pamphlet, he initiated a new political movement for Jews, advocating for their own country. However, this was not a novel idea at the time. Since the 1870s, several organizations identified as lovers of Zion had been promoting this idea. Consequently, in 1881, the first large-scale Jewish immigration to the Palestine region occurred. Jews began establishing permanent settlements and residing there. Why did they choose the Palestine area? Because it was considered a sacred area for them, with Jerusalem being the holiest site for Jews. At that time, there was no Israel, Gaza, or West Bank. The entire area was Palestine under Ottoman rule. Under the Ottoman Empire, Christians, Muslims, and Jews coexisted relatively peacefully due to the sparse population and largely uninhabited land. Now to 1915, the First World War begins. The British, French, and Arab revolutionaries fought against the Ottoman Empire. The British played a cunning game here. They told the Arab revolutionaries that in exchange for their support to defeat the Ottoman Empire, they would be given territory in Palestine. The Arab revolutionaries were fighting to establish a united Arab state. They wanted an Arab country extending from Syria to Yemen. Then in 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour sent a letter from London to Jewish leader Lord Rothschild. This letter is known as the Balfour Declaration. In the letter, the British government promised to assist in the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. They intended to help create a Jewish state in Palestine to appease American Jews and influence American politics. However, in reality, the British secretly made agreements with the French. After the First World War and the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Britain and France divided the Middle East territory between themselves. The British took control of the Palestinian region. From 1918 to 1948, the entire Palestinian area was under British control. Meanwhile, in 1920, Iraq came under British mandate. However, there was widespread dissatisfaction among the Iraqi people against British rule, which manifested in the Iraqi Revolt of 1920. In 1932, Iraq officially gained independence and joined the League of Nations. It was the first Arab country in the Middle East to gain independence from a British mandate. During this time, Hitler came to political power in Germany and began the mass extermination of Jews. To save themselves, Jews fled from Hitler-controlled Europe to different countries. Some sought refuge in America, but many Jews went to Palestine. Initially, Britain allowed them to enter Palestine, but later started restricting their entry. This led to the rise of a Zionist movement in Palestine. Simultaneously, in the 1940s, a Palestinian nationalist movement began, with Palestinians also demanding their own country. By 1948, the British government realized that enough was enough, and they could no longer stay there. The Jews were aiming to form a new state while the Palestinians were demanding their own country. The British accepted that they could not handle the situation and handed over the responsibility to the United Nations. The British then left Palestine. Let's turn to Syria now. On September 1st, 1920, France completely separated Greater Lebanon from Syria. Historically, France favored the Maronite Christians of Lebanon. They wanted to separate Lebanon from the predominantly Muslim part of Syria to develop it as a Christian-majority state under French influence. From 1921 to 1924, France attempted to divide Syria into various parts. The people of Syria expressed discontent against French rule and began a movement for independence. The Great Syrian Revolt of 1925-27 was a significant rebellion against France. The people of Syria fought against France to restore their rights. France itself was occupied by Germany, and the French mandate in the Middle East began to loosen. After the war in 1946, France completely withdrew its forces from Syria. Thus, Syria emerged as an independent state. Meanwhile, the United Nations brought forward a partition plan regarding the Palestine and Israel issue, which allocated areas for the creation of a Jewish state and a Palestinian state. In 1947, the United Nations published the partition plan. According to the plan, the UN allocated 57% of the area to the Jews and 43% to the Arab Palestinian state. Jerusalem, being historically important to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, was decided to be under international control by the UN. The Jews accepted this plan and named their new country Israel. This marks the birth of the State of Israel in 1948. But unfortunately, the neighboring Arab countries were not at all satisfied with this plan. They believed that the plan was essentially a way for the British to continue their colonial control. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared its independence. This declaration was made based on the UN Partition Plan. The next day, on May 15th, the military forces of Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq began attacking Israel. These countries believed that the establishment of Israel would create a threat to the Arab world and violate the rights of the Palestinians. The Arab countries attacked Israel from three directions: Egypt from the south, Jordan and Iraq from the east, and Syria and Lebanon from the north. Although the Israeli army was less experienced and smaller in number, they managed to build a strong resistance. The Israeli forces received support from Jewish volunteers worldwide. At that time, Czechoslovakia was the main arms supplier to Israel. During the war, Israel acquired weapons, ammunition, and other military equipment from them. This included Avia S-199 fighter planes, Mauser K98K rifles, MG-34 machine guns, and Israelis also received military training in Czechoslovakia. The Israeli Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi militia groups secretly amassed weapons even before the war began. In 1920, the Haganah was formed as a self-defense force for the Jewish community in British Mandate Palestine. It was a mainstream organization that laid the foundation for Israel's future defense forces, IDF. The Haganah secretly imported weapons, which were smuggled into Palestine. They established arms depots during the British Mandate and produced weapons in secret factories. One such secret ammunition factory was the Ayalon Institute, which operated under the guise of a laundry establishment. During the war, the main supplier of weapons was Czechoslovakia. The Haganah created an elite unit called Palmach, trained by the British Army and highly skilled in conducting military operations for Israel. Irgun was formed in 1931 after splitting from the Haganah. It was more aggressive and actively resisted British rule and Arab militias. Irgun sourced weapons from various countries in the Middle East, such as France, Italy, Poland, the United States, and South America. They imported military equipment through secret arms, smuggling, and fundraising from their supporters. Lehi was a small but highly aggressive group. It was formed in 1940 after separating from Irgun. Lehi conducted guerrilla warfare against the British Mandate administration. Lehi was adept at secretly acquiring weapons and smuggling them from various sources in the Middle East. They purchased weapons through fundraising from their supporters. These organizations created international networks to secretly gather arms, avoiding the scrutiny of British and Arab forces. Weapons were smuggled by sea and land routes. Israel quickly organized its defense and launched counterattacks on the battlefield. Their goal was to push the enemies away from the borders. Israel won the war and expanded its territory. Compared to the Partition Plan, they managed to occupy about 78% of the land. As a result of the war, around 700,000 Palestinians had to flee their land. Most of them took refuge in Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria.